Me, 20-year-old male, and my girlfriend, 20-year-old female, have been together for a little less than a year now. But this starts when she was 17. When my girlfriend, 17 years old at the time, let's call her Sarah, not her real name, was in high school, she met Tom, also not a real name. Tom, 24 years old at the time, was a SRO at her school, and when no one else was there for her, Sarah would sit in his office during lunch and hang out with him like any other classmate or friend. Tom was the only adult that didn't treat her like a kid. They hung out more and got closer. Tom would sit in her car with her and her friends after school. Tom said that he felt like he was a part of their group. He told her about stuff in his childhood that hurt him and how he felt broken, and she reciprocated. They started a relationship behind his wife's back, behind his kid's back. They never got to actual intimacy, but they did oral. But it wasn't just about intimacy. Sarah loved Tom. Word got around and Tom was put on suspension and got sent home while an investigation went on. Within a week, he ended the life of himself. Sarah was ridiculed, to say the least. She was told not to come to school. Her classmates called her Cop Fricker and Cop Unalived. They poked fun at her and her friends. The only reason she is still here is her school counselor that let Sarah stay in her room for weeks after that and just cry and feel. Back to the present. When me and her got together, friends introduced us. She hadn't had any type of relationship after or before Tom, and our friends were transparent. They told me what they thought I would need to know and what they knew was okay to tell. And over time, after weeks of talking, she finally opened up to me. She told me things I didn't know yet and stuff I did, fleshing out their relationship and timeline. I could see that she had grown and moved on, but was still hurt and scarred. It is scarring, having someone you love so violently ripped from your life. We got together after a month or so of talking back and forth and a few dates, and we started dating. Things went well, and over time, she got more comfortable with me, and she would talk to me about Tom, which was a little uncomfortable, but I knew that it helped her, so I would be supportive and reassuring. I even talked about my exes and the experiences I had with them to make her more comfortable. Last December, it hit her hard. She cried in my arms for hours, reminiscing over him. She talked about what he meant to her and what kind of person he was. Every time she would talk about him, it was something new. Just a few days ago, we were hanging out at her house, and she just randomly started crying and talking about him. I didn't say anything, and that's when I messed up. She started apologizing and clammed up. I reassured her that it was fine and she was just expressing herself, and I support her. Here's my problem. I am starting to feel like I am living in his shadow. She still talks about qualities she loved about him, and it's hard not to take it personally. I know she's just venting, but it's like it's a jab at me. Anytime she brings him up anymore, I feel like I'm not good enough. Like I can't keep her happy. I'm becoming numb to the subject, likely because I'm trying to push my feelings aside to try and be supportive, to try and not make her feel bad like I did the other day. I start to think he deserved it and he knew what he was doing, that he groomed her. I'm starting to not care anymore. Should I talk to her about it? How would I even approach that? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Dude, she's not at the point where she actually understands what happened. You can't compete with her fantasy, and it's just going to be repeated, tiny kicks in the nuts for you, until you snap. And it sounds like you're closer than you realize to that point. She needs to go through her grief and some serious therapy to understand what happened. You can't lead her there. You just have to tell her that she needs professional support to come to terms with some things. And until she does that, you're not going to be able to be in a relationship with her for your own peace of mind. I know you're frustrated. You want her to snap out of it and acknowledge the guy was a married predator who used his position of authority to seek out a vulnerable girl. She's not ready to hear that, so it's just time to walk away. Comment 2. So she was groomed when she was in high school. The guy got found out and she is still reminiscing about him. She needs to accept that his death is a result of him being a groomer and cheater. That's who he was. Her positive feelings towards him are a result of his emotional manipulation. You need to tell her that and express that her being unable to accept who he actually was will make it difficult to have a healthy relationship moving forward. She's created this idealized version of this guy in her head that doesn't map onto reality. You will never be able to compete with this effectively fictional person in her head. He knew what he was doing. Don't say he deserved it. Don't tell her yet that you are starting not to care anymore. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. It's been a week since I shared my story about my girlfriend Sarah and her past with Tom, the SRO. I've got an update for you all, and let me tell you, it's been a roller coaster. So, after I posted last time, things took a turn. Sarah and I were hanging out at my place watching a movie when she got a text. It was from Tom's wife. I didn't even know she had Sarah's number. The message was a shocker. She wanted to meet Sarah to talk about Tom. Sarah was torn up about it, but she agreed to meet her. The day of the meeting, I could tell Sarah was nervous. She was fidgeting, biting her nails, a habit she had told me she picked up after Tom's death. I offered to go with her, but she said she needed to do this alone. I understood, but I couldn't help but feel a bit sidelined. When Sarah came back from the meeting, she was different. She told me Tom's wife had forgiven her, said she understood that Tom had manipulated Sarah, and that she didn't blame her for what happened. But that wasn't all. Tom's wife had revealed that Tom had done this before, with another girl, years before Sarah. It was a pattern. Sarah was devastated. She had always seen Tom as the one good thing in her life during a tough time, but now she was forced to see him in a new, darker light. This revelation hit Sarah hard. She started questioning everything about their relationship. She had always told me how Tom listened to her when no one else did, how he made her feel seen. But now she wondered if it was all just a part of his manipulation. It was like she was mourning him all over again, but for different reasons. I tried to be there for her, but it was tough. I felt like I was competing with a ghost whose image was crumbling. And then things between us got even more complicated. One night, Sarah broke down and admitted that she felt guilty for being with me, like she was betraying Tom. That hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always known I was her first relationship since Tom, but hearing her say that made me feel like a placeholder, someone she settled for because the person she really wanted was gone. I didn't know how to handle it. I wanted to be supportive, but I also felt like I was losing her to a memory. I started to pull away, which only made things worse. Sarah noticed my distance and confronted me about it. It was the first real fight we'd ever had. She accused me of not understanding, of not caring about her feelings. I shot back that I was tired of living in Tom's shadow, of feeling like I had to compete with a dead man for her love. The fight was ugly, and we both said things we regretted, but it also broke open the dam that had been building between us. After we both calmed down, we had the most honest conversation we've ever had. Sarah admitted that she had been holding on to Tom because he was her first love, but she also realized that she had been idealizing him, ignoring the bad parts of their relationship. I told her about my own insecurities, about how I felt like I was always second best. It was a tough talk, but it was necessary. We both cried, we both apologized, and we both agreed that we wanted to move forward together. Since then, things have been better. Not perfect, but better. Sarah has started seeing a therapist to work through her feelings about Tom, and I've been doing my best to be patient and understanding. We're taking it one day at a time, trying to build something new, something that's just ours. But it's not easy. Sometimes, when Sarah gets that faraway look in her eyes, I wonder if she's thinking about Tom. And I'd be lying if I said that didn't hurt. But I also know that she's here with me, that she's choosing to be with me. And that has to count for something. GF wouldn't stop bothering me while I was setting up my film equipment, so I got my sweet revenge. Something pretty heavy just happened in my relationship, and I'm reeling, exhausted, and devastated. Last week, I had an important film shoot. I'm a producer-director. I was delayed in picking up the gear, so it was 10:30 p.m. or so before I had a chance to check all the equipment in our shared studio apartment. Still, it was 1:30 hours of work at most, and I could still get enough sleep that night. My girlfriend arrived home around 10 p.m. or so, and the moment I started looking over the gear, she asked me if I needed help with the equipment. Initially, I thought this was a little unusual of an offer because she and I both knew that she doesn't know the gear. I politely reminded her of that fact, and that what I needed now was total quiet so I can focus on the 8 to 10 bags I had in my possession. To make sure nothing was missing, everything worked, to charge the batteries, etc. We had done projects together in the past, with her starring. She's an artist, and she knew enough to know that, well, she didn't know the gear. So I continued to my task at hand. Then the next question came, do you want to look over your storyboards? I said no, actually, storyboards have been done for 2 days. What I really need is quiet. And then the next question came, do you need help with interview questions? I repeated a similar thing. No, interview questions are done. I just need quiet. There was nowhere for me to go in our small studio apartment. So at one point I put on AirPods to drown her out, but she still talked over the music. I had audio gear, camera gear, and lighting, so even the smallest missing piece could be costly on the day of the shoot. It wasn't a hard task, but I needed to be really focused for that hour and a half. What followed from here, I'm still having trouble getting over or understanding. For the next 2 to 3 hours, I was being offered help, which I didn't need, and I repeated myself again and again with the same refrain, I just need quiet, please, that she repeatedly ignored. Every time I was interrupted, I lost my focus, and I had to start that particular task from the beginning. I was getting more and more desperate as the hours went by. First, I was worried that I wouldn't get enough sleep. Then, I started worrying if the task would get finished at all. At a certain point in the night, this was still going on. 2 a.m. or so, I started losing gas. So I shifted strategies and tried going to sleep. The idea was to get a bit of rest and then do it in the morning. But at that point, my heart was racing, and I was so upset and confused about what was going on that I couldn't sleep. So I got up again with a bit of a second wind and tried again, and there she was again, offering her help, distracting me. Over the course of the night, I went from politely asking to be left alone to pleading, to begging. Eventually, I got angry and yelled. Nothing worked. In the end, I got less than an hour of rest that night and was late to my own set because I had to do that essential work I couldn't finish with her interrupting me. The shoot went well, somehow, but it could have been a complete disaster with me running on no sleep if I couldn't perform properly. I'm writing all this because I don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I have had a loving relationship with a lot of common ground and a lot of good times. I've known her for our entire relationship to be somewhat obsessive in her career, theater, and interests, which has its drawbacks. But I really love her. I'm still leaning towards breaking up. She gives no explanation for what happened. What the actual heck just happened? Has anyone ever heard of behavior like this? In the context of what was seemingly a happy 4 years relationship, I can't seem to get much out of her besides, you seemed stressed. But I wasn't. I was ready. I just don't understand what's going on. The shoot on no sleep was grueling, but I survived. I'm still so physically and mentally tired and beat up by what happened. I'm stunned anyone would behave this way. I just don't understand. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I scrolled through a bunch of comments and didn't see this, so I will just throw it out there. Lots of comments have mentioned deliberate sabotage, but it sounds to me like some sort of break with reality, either drugs or a manic episode. If my long-term partner started to continuously bother me with a barrage of questions, when I repeatedly asked to be left alone, I would have to assume that her brain wasn't working correctly. It sounds like a manic episode of some sort, but it doesn't have to be medical. There are many drugs that could cause that sort of behavior, both recreational and prescription. Comment 2. Honestly, reading this, it feels like an annoying nightmare. Something that isn't really scary, but it's so off that it's disturbing. I think you should try to get some sleep. Get a couple of days worth of good night's sleep, then see how you feel after that. Let everything pass, then see what you're feeling. During your rest time, just try to keep things as normal as possible. Process it, eat healthy, etc. Then talk to her. If she still doesn't understand, then reconsider the relationship. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a hectic few days, and I've got some updates that I think you'll find pretty interesting. So, after the shoot, I was running on fumes, but I had to confront my girlfriend about what happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me. We've always been open with each other, sharing our fears and dreams since we met at a mutual friend's art exhibit 4 years ago. But this felt different, like a wall had gone up between us. I decided to approach her calmly after we both had some time to cool off. I asked her point blank why she kept interrupting me that night. At first, she tried to dodge the question, but I could tell something was eating at her. Finally, she broke down and admitted that she was scared. Her theater group had been struggling, and she was worried about her future in acting. She had been using my film shoot as a distraction from her own problems. I was floored. We'd always supported each other's careers, but I had no idea she was feeling so insecure. It turns out the theater group she'd been with since college was on the brink of shutting down. They'd been like a family to her, and the thought of losing them was too much to bear. She'd been keeping it all to herself, trying to be strong. We had a long emotional talk that night. I told her about the time I almost gave up on directing after my first film flopped. It was a low point for me, but she had been there, encouraging me to keep going. Reminding her of that seemed to help her open up more. She started to see that leaning on each other was not a sign of weakness, but a part of our strength as a couple. The next day, we both took a day off to recharge and reconnect. We spent it doing all the things we loved when we first started dating, visiting art galleries, watching old movies, and even doing some impromptu acting scenes in the park. It was like we were rediscovering each other all over again. But the real jaw-dropping moment came the following day. My girlfriend had arranged a meeting with her theater group to discuss their future. I tagged along for moral support. The atmosphere was tense when we arrived, but my girlfriend, inspired by our heart-to-heart, took charge. She proposed a bold new project to attract sponsors and audiences, using a blend of live theater and filmed sequences, something they'd never tried before. To everyone's surprise, an investor who had attended their last performance was in the meeting. He'd been impressed by their passion and was looking for a fresh, innovative project to fund. He loved the idea and agreed to back them up, ensuring the theater's survival and giving them a new direction. The group was ecstatic, and my girlfriend was hailed as a hero. She had saved the theater that meant so much to her, and it was all because she found the courage to face her fears and take a risk. And the best part? She wanted me to direct the film sequences for their project. It was the perfect blend of our talents and passions. As for our relationship, it's stronger than ever. We've learned the importance of communication and supporting each other through thick and thin. It's been a crazy few days, but we've come out of it with a renewed sense of purpose and love for each other. Stepdad demands I leave my iPhone outside his house so I get sweet revenge on him. I'm a 28-year-old male, and my mom, 59 years old, has been living in the countryside with her partner, Gary, 58 years old, for the past few years. I cherish the times I can visit her. We are close, and since she moved, I don't see her as often. My mom, being Italian, loves having company and taking care of her kids. However, Gary makes it clear that it is his house, not hers. This is not usually an issue, except for his belief in various conspiracy theories, lizard people, etc. One particular belief of his is that mobile phones, especially iPhones, emit harmful frequencies and radiation. He claims to have a disability that makes him sensitive to these frequencies, although he seems fine with all the mobile phones around him when we are in public. When my siblings and I visit, Gary insists that our iPhones are giving him headaches. He demands that we either put them in a metal box or leave them outside, a few meters away from the house. I am turning 30 years old next year, and it does feel a bit like being a kid getting their iPad taken away, but I have been going along with it to keep the peace. He justifies this by describing his house as a Faraday cage and uses an EMF reader to show us the supposed spike in radiation. If he suspects phone usage, he will inspect the house with the meter and start complaining to my mom about headaches. This puts mom in a hard situation, as she has to go along with it. Last week was a tough one, and my mom suggested I stay with them for the weekend. As he is fine with wired internet, I even bought a LAN to Lightning for my phone to help the situation, hoping for a peaceful visit. Last night I went to see her and consciously chose not to use my phone, leaving it in the guest bedroom with my belongings. Unfortunately, buying the adapter turned out to be pointless. Gary still insisted that the frequencies would affect him, regardless of whether the mobile network or even the phone itself was turned off. To demonstrate, he used an EMF reader to show the various spikes in frequencies. When I retired to the guest bedroom, I admit I did start using my phone to catch up on the day's events. Almost immediately, Gary was outside the guest room door with the EMF reader and began to complain, questioning whether I was on my phone. This time, however, a disagreement ensued. I stepped out of the room to express that my intention was simply to spend time with my mother and have a relaxing weekend. I was particularly upset because I felt I have been genuinely trying to compromise. His rebuttal was, "I have a disability, it is my house, and you are not showing me respect." Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Don't stay in Gary's house. Get a hotel room. Get one for mom too. Gary can stay safe in his cage. For what it's worth, as long as your phone is on and not in airplane mode, it is going to emit whatever frequencies it is programmed for. If you wanted it not to talk to the cell towers, put it in airplane mode. To especially annoy Gary, let him know that as soon as any cell phone is on, even his, the man knows exactly where that phone is within 50 feet and to whom the phone is registered to. Tell him it is Congress's doing to track you. E911 laws. You are welcome. Comment 2. Let him know that the EMF reader commonly picks up more ghost activity than radiation, so all those spikes are his demons reaching out. Then sit back and watch his world burn. Now for the update. Hey everyone. A lot has happened since my last post about the situation with my mom and her partner Gary. I know you all were pretty invested in the drama, so here's the update you've been waiting for. So, after that argument with Gary about his so-called disability and the whole phone fiasco, things got pretty tense. I was there to spend time with my mom, but it felt like I was walking on eggshells. I mean, I love my mom, and she's always been the type to make sure everyone's comfortable and happy. But with Gary, it's like his house, his rules, and no room for discussion. Anyway, the next day, I decided to try and clear the air. I went to Gary and tried to explain that I respected his house, but also wanted to stay connected with my friends and the outside world. Gary, surprisingly, was a bit more receptive than usual. Maybe he realized that he had pushed it too far the night before. We sat down, and after a long talk, we came to a compromise. Gary agreed that I could use my phone in a specific area of the house he deemed safe from his sensitivity to frequencies. In return, I promised to keep my phone usage to a minimum, and only in that area. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. But here's where it gets juicy. That night, while I was in the safe area texting my friends, I overheard a conversation between Gary and my mom. It turns out Gary's ex-wife had left him because she couldn't deal with his conspiracy theories and his controlling behavior. My mom was starting to feel the same way, and she was confiding in him that she needed more freedom, more respect. The next day, my mom pulled me aside. She told me about her own struggles with Gary, how she felt like she was losing her identity trying to appease him. She loved him, but she also missed her independence, her ability to make her own decisions without walking on eggshells. I was shocked. My mom had always been this strong, independent woman who moved to the countryside for a quieter life, not to be controlled by someone else's irrational fears. I could see the toll it was taking on her, and it broke my heart. The confrontation that followed was something out of a movie. My mom stood up to Gary, telling him she wasn't going to live like this anymore. She wanted a partnership, not a dictatorship. Gary was taken aback. He had never expected my mom to challenge him like this. In the heat of the moment, Gary admitted that he might have exaggerated his sensitivity to phone frequencies because he felt like he was losing control over his life, just like he did with his ex-wife. He was afraid of being left alone again. This revelation was a turning point. My mom, being the caring person she is, didn't want to leave Gary, but she made it clear that things had to change. They agreed to see a counselor to work through their issues, and Gary even promised to be more open-minded about the phone situation. As for me, I was proud of my mom for standing her ground. It was a reminder of the strong woman who raised me, the woman who taught me to be respectful but also to never lose sight of my own needs and boundaries. The rest of my visit was surprisingly peaceful. Gary kept to his word and allowed me to use my phone without any complaints. It was weird, but in a good way. My mom seemed happier too, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Before I left, my mom and I had a long talk about everything. She shared stories of her youth in Italy, how she had always been a free spirit, and how she didn't want to lose that part of herself. It was a reminder of the vibrant, adventurous woman she was before moving to the countryside. I left feeling hopeful for my mom and Gary. It seemed like they were on a path to finding a balance that worked for both of them. And as for me, I was just glad to have my phone back without causing World War III. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.